You woke up this morning thinking it was just another day, didn't you? Same ceiling, same routine, same tired thoughts crawling around your head. But somewhere between the first blink and the first breath, you did something different. Something small, maybe. Something no one else would even notice. But it cracked the pattern. It shifted the script. And most people don't realize how rare that is, how rare you were, just for a moment. Because while the world keeps spinning in circles, repeating the same tired dance, you stepped even an inch outside that loop. And that inch, that's where unbelievable things begin. Most people wake up and go through the motions, believing that every day is just another blur of sameness. Alarm rings, eyes squint, feet hit the floor, and the mind immediately starts calculating the next step, the next obligation, the next chore that must be done. The pattern repeats like a broken record, a song stuck in the static of routine. And they tell themselves nothing ever changes. That life is a series of small, inconsequential steps, each one blending into the other. But then, without fanfare, without applause, without even the slightest notice, you did something different this morning. Something so simple, so minuscule in the eyes of the world, that no one would ever write a headline about it. Yet in its quietness, it shattered the pattern. It might have been as small as opening your eyes and deciding not to hit snooze. As trivial as choosing to stand up before the world demanded it. Maybe it was saying a single sentence out loud to yourself that you've been avoiding for weeks, or deciding to drink water before coffee for the first time in months. None of it seems remarkable on the surface. No one stood by the bed and cheered you on. No one took a video. But the unbelievable part isn't in what they saw, it's in the choice you made. The moment you chose differently, you created a ripple in the stagnant pond of repetition, the pond that most people never dare disturb, because it's safer to float along than to rock the surface and risk the unknown. You did it while the rest of the world slept, while the streets were empty and the sky was still bruised from the night. You acted. And that's the point. The unbelievable isn't always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's in the spaces no one notices. The world is addicted to spectacle, to noise, to flash, but true power often lives in the corners, in the shadows, in the small moments that are completely invisible until they compound into something undeniable. What you did this morning may seem invisible to them, but it is absolutely seismic for you. Every monumental change, every radical shift, every unbelievable story begins in these little moments. Think about it. The people who appear unstoppable, who inspire, who seem larger than life, didn't start by walking onto stages, signing contracts, or being applauded. They started with the tiny, unbelievable moments nobody else witnessed. The moment they decided to try, the moment they decided not to quit, the moment they chose to wake up differently from yesterday. They started in silence, in corners, in mornings like yours. And it's in those mornings that the trajectory of a life is quietly rewritten. You just participated in that quiet revolution. You just whispered rebellion into the script that says mornings are always the same. And here is the strange thing about the unbelievable. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be effective. It doesn't need fireworks. It doesn't need cameras. It doesn't need validation. It just needs action. Action that breaks the pattern. Action that says, I'm not the same as yesterday. And you did that. You made a choice. Maybe it was conscious. Maybe it was instinctual. Maybe it was subtle enough that you barely even noticed it yourself. But the difference is that you acted. Most people drift through the morning as if it belongs to someone else, as if they are puppets on a string, but you tugged the string yourself. You pushed yourself into a space where nothing was guaranteed, where no one was guiding you, and that is inherently unbelievable. When you do something unbelievable in the quiet of the morning, it sets the tone for the entire day. It creates a rhythm that the world cannot dictate. It is a declaration, even if unspoken, that you are not powerless, that your choices have weight, that your life is not a series of coincidences, but a series of intentions, however small. Every step, every breath, every small defiance compounds. And in that quiet, unnoticed defiance, you begin to build momentum. Momentum that cannot be stopped by external validation, by noise, by distraction. by those who do not see. You alone are witnessing it, and that is enough. So yes, what you did this morning might seem trivial to anyone else, but to you, it is everything. Because you acted. You interrupted the autopilot of life. You chose differently. You cracked the ordinary just enough for something extraordinary to seep through. And the unbelievable begins not with grand gestures, not with fireworks, not with crowds, but with the kind of small, defiant, unobserved action that you took this morning. Fear is a funny thing. It hides in the corners of your mind, whispering lies in your ear, telling you that you can't, that you shouldn't, that the world will swallow you whole if you try. Most people wake up and let fear dictate the first hour of their day, letting hesitation wrap itself around their chest like a noose. But this morning you didn't. You didn't let it. You faced it, even in the smallest way, and that is what makes what you did unbelievable. Not because the world noticed, not because someone wrote it down or cheered for you, but because fear is a master manipulator and you just cut its strings before breakfast. Maybe it was the courage to speak, to say one sentence that carried all the weight of months of silence. Maybe it was the courage to leave your bed, to stop hiding under the warmth of blankets that felt like safety but were slowly suffocating you. Maybe it was the courage to make a choice that you've been avoiding. A decision that felt too heavy, too risky, too impossible. Whatever it was, it required a confrontation with yourself, with the voice that says, you're not enough, you can't do this, stay down, stay small. And you didn't listen, you acted, you moved, you did the unbelievable thing, because you refused to be paralyzed by the chains of fear the people around you. The ones who never take risks, who never challenge themselves, they can't understand this. They go through life like drones, content with the comfort of the ordinary, terrified of the unpredictable. But courage isn't about fear disappearing. Courage is about fear existing and moving anyway. It's about doing something when your body screams to stay put, when your mind plots every reason to retreat, when your instincts beg for safety. Courage doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't seek permission. And that's why what you did this morning is unbelievable, because it was brave, it was raw, it was real, and it was entirely yours. Most people confuse courage with heroism. They think you need a crowd, a spotlight, a dramatic gesture. They think fear can only be conquered in moments that matter to the world. But the truth is, the most powerful acts of courage are invisible. They happen in bedrooms, in kitchens, in bathrooms, in quiet streets, in moments where no one is watching and the world doesn't care. It is in these moments that the foundations of greatness are laid. Every monumental choice starts with a small act of defiance against fear, a tiny rebellion against the voice that says you can't. And you did exactly that. Think about the weight of what it means to act in spite of fear. Your hands shake, your mind races, your heart pounds, and yet you keep moving. Every step feels like a rebellion against a lifetime of conditioning, every breath of victory against the stories you've been telling yourself for years. You did something unbelievable because you stared at the thing that terrified you most, the thing you thought would break you, and you didn't flinch. You didn't freeze. You didn't retreat. You stepped forward, even if it was just a single, trembling step, and in that step you claimed a little piece of your life back. Fear is patient. It waits. It will try again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. It whispers that yesterday was a fluke, that today will be harder, that tomorrow will crush you. But you've already shown it that it can be confronted. You've already proven to yourself that courage exists within you. You've already done something that makes the impossible feel tangible. And that changes everything. Because once fear has been stared down even for a moment, it begins to lose its power, and you gain yours. What makes this morning unbelievable isn't a headline, a trophy, or a crowd. It's the fact that you confronted yourself, that you acknowledged the weight of fear, and you acted anyway. That you took the first domino, tipped it over, and watched the momentum of courage begin to roll. Every day afterward, every choice, every small act of bravery builds on that first moment. And the ripple of courage, started quietly in the morning, spreads farther than anyone watching could. Imagine you did something unbelievable because you acted when every part of you wanted to hesitate, because you refused to be frozen by fear, because you understood that the only way forward is to move, no matter how small the step, no matter how shaky the hands, no matter how loud the doubt. You didn't wait for confidence to arrive. You created it through action. You didn't wait for someone else to notice. You claimed it for yourself. And that is the kind of unbelievable courage that sets the tone for everything else that follows. People forget how much power lies in a single choice. They wake up, drag themselves through the motions, and assume life is something that happens to them, that the day is a river carrying them wherever it pleases. But this morning you made a choice, a small one maybe, a quiet one, but a choice nonetheless. And in that choice, something remarkable happened, something that most people will never see, never understand, never even imagine. Because the unbelievable isn't always a spectacle. It's often the subtle refusal to be ordinary, the tiny insistence that you matter, enough to act when everyone else is asleep, distracted, or too comfortable to move. Maybe it was the choice to stand instead of sit, to speak instead of stay silent, to do the thing you've been putting off for weeks, months, maybe years, the thing that seemed too heavy, too distant, too impossible. And the world, of course, didn't cheer. No one was there to clap, to nod, to validate. The morning didn't pause for you. But that doesn't matter, because choices like this are unseen fireworks. They explode quietly inside you, inside your mind, inside the trajectory of your life. You can't measure them in applause. You can't quantify them in likes or pats on the back. You measure them in the shift they create in your soul and the gravity they build beneath your feet. Every day, people follow patterns, routines, scripts written by everyone except themselves. Alarm rings, coffee brews, the same commute, the same conversations, the same excuses, and they tell themselves it's normal, safe, practical, predictable. But predictability is the enemy of the unbelievable. The unbelievable emerges only when you disrupt the pattern, when you act in a way that doesn't fit neatly into the expectations others have written for you. And this morning, even if only in a small, seemingly insignificant way, you disrupted the pattern. You chose differently. You made a move that the rest of the world would dismiss, but that was monumental for you. Power often hides in these unnoticed choices. People chase dramatic changes, loud victories, grand gestures. They crave visible proof that someone is doing something extraordinary. But real power, the kind that shifts trajectories, doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It slips past the eyes of the inattentive. It waits for the moment when the world is blind and acts anyway. And that's what you did. You whispered to the world without even lifting your voice. You moved the pieces quietly, deliberately, in a way that set something bigger in motion than anyone could see. Consider how rare it is to act before the crowd notices, to step forward when no one else is watching, to make a choice without expectation of reward. That rarity is what makes the morning unbelievable. People spend their lives waiting for validation, for recognition, for confirmation. They stall, hesitate, and settle. But you didn't wait. You didn't hesitate. You didn't settle. And even if the choice seemed tiny, a single moment, a single action, it represents the fracture in the monotony, the crack in the routine, the opening where change begins. Choice is a declaration. It is proof that you are not merely a passenger in your own life, that you can bend the path, that you can rewrite the narrative in small, powerful strokes. Every monumental transformation starts in moments like this. Every story that feels larger than life begins with the kind of decision that seems invisible to the world, but is seismic for the person making it. And you made one this morning. You claimed agency when it was easier to stay passive. You planted a seed when it was easier to wait for rain. You refused to be ordinary even when ordinary was safe. The unbelievable doesn't need a witness. It doesn't need applause or attention. It only requires action. And action breeds momentum. One choice leads to another. One step forward lays the foundation for the next. And the person who acts, even quietly, even invisibly, begins to move faster than the world expects. You did that this morning. You created a spark, a tremor, a ripple in the pond of your own life that will spread farther than anyone could measure. And the ripple starts with you, with your choice, with the moment you decide not to wait. Most people never realize the weight of such choices. They underestimate the quiet revolution that begins when someone refuses to follow the expected path, when someone dares to act differently, when someone claims their agency in the shadows of routine. But that is exactly what happened. You chose differently. And that choice carries with it the beginning of something larger, something unstoppable, something that will not be erased by the monotony of the day, by the disbelief of others, or by the smallness that most people settle for in their mornings. Most people wake up every morning and follow the same map, the same script, the same lines written by yesterday, by habit, by expectation. They hit snooze, they scroll their phones, they shuffle through routines that make life predictable, safe, and painfully ordinary. And they tell themselves, this is all there is, this rhythm, this sameness, this autopilot existence. But this morning, you didn't follow the script. You didn't repeat the pattern. You did something different, something small yet seismic, something invisible yet powerful. You acted where most people would hesitate. You moved where most people would stay frozen. And in that small divergence, you created a moment that is quietly, undeniably unbelievable. It might have been a single decision, almost unnoticeable, a decision to rise when your body begged for comfort, to face a task you've been avoiding, to speak when you might have stayed silent. Maybe it was taking responsibility for something you usually ignore. Maybe it was choosing to act with integrity when shortcuts whispered their easy, deceptive lullabies. Whatever it was a defiance of inertia. And defiance, even the smallest when performed in the silence of the morning, carries with it a weight that the world cannot see but the universe notices. That's how the unbelievable begins, not with fireworks, not with applause, not with recognition, but with a simple, deliberate choice to do something differently. Most people think that being noticed, being admired, being applauded is what gives an action its value. But the truth is, the morning is a private battlefield, a place where the most significant victories happen unseen, when the world is asleep, when eyes are elsewhere, when no one is paying attention. That is where courage is measured. That is where discipline is forged. That is where character is revealed. You did something this morning that no one might know about, and that makes it more real, more raw, more powerful than any action performed for recognition. The unbelievable thrives in obscurity, in spaces where no one can inflate or diminish it, where the only witness is your own awareness. Think about the ripple effect of what it means to disrupt a pattern. Every time you act differently than the autopilot expects, you plant a seed of change. Every small, deliberate action alters the trajectory of your day, of your decisions, of your mindset. And while the rest of the world drifts along like passengers on a train they think they control, you are the conductor, even if just for a moment. You choose the direction, the speed, the energy. You create momentum where others allow stagnation. And that momentum, quiet as it is, cannot be erased by skepticism, by routine, by the complacency of others. The unbelievable doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't require fanfare. The world rewards spectacle because spectacle is easy to see, easy to digest, easy to pretend matters. But you acted in a space that the spectacle cannot reach. You claimed victory where the eyes are closed, in moments where no one can judge, in actions where intention outweighs visibility. That is how real change begins, by taking ownership of your own agency before anyone else even notices you have it. That is how the small, unseen defiance of routine grows into something unstoppable, something that reshapes habits, decisions, and even identity every morning. Fear, laziness, comfort, and habit stand at the doorway and whisper, stay down, don't move, wait. And most people listen. Most people hit snooze, procrastinate, pause, avoid. But you didn't. You acted. You chose momentum over inertia, risk over comfort, agency over passivity. And that tiny rebellion, that single act, is unbelievable because it defies the default expectation of human behavior. It proves to yourself that you are not bound by the ordinary, that your choices matter, and that your life does not belong to autopilot. What you did this morning also sets the tone for everything else that follows. Every choice you make from this moment onward is built on the foundation of the courage, discipline, and deliberate action you demonstrated earlier. Every decision is easier because you've proven to yourself that you are capable. Every hesitation loses a little of its power because you confronted the inertia head on and refused to surrender. You created a precedent for yourself, and precedent, once established, is the invisible scaffolding that supports every subsequent act of audacity, resilience, and growth. People might never see it. They might never say it. They might never understand the weight of what you accomplished. But that's irrelevant. The unbelievable is not defined by witnesses. It is defined by action, by the act of moving when everyone else is still, by the act of claiming your own agency when others hand theirs to routine, by the act of writing a small, private revolution into the beginning of your day. And this morning you did exactly that. Quietly, defiantly, beautifully, unbelievably. People spend their lives chasing recognition, applause, approval, as if their worth depends on the eyes of others. They perform for validation, bend themselves into shapes that fit the expectations of everyone around them, and call it living. But what you did this morning wasn't for anyone else. You didn't need an audience, a nod, a comment, a like. You acted for yourself, and that's what makes it extraordinary. Confidence without attention is a quiet kind of rebellion. It doesn't seek permission, it doesn't beg for approval, and it doesn't rely on the applause of the crowd. Yet, somehow, it commands more attention than the loudest performance in the room. Imagine the world as a stage full of people dancing for recognition, screaming to be seen, desperate for validation like addicts chasing a hit. They bend over backward to fit into roles, to shape their actions around the expectation of others, to be wanted because they are afraid of being invisible. And then there's you. This morning you didn't follow the script. You didn't perform. You didn't seek to impress anyone. You didn't even glance at the audience. You simply acted with purpose, with clarity, with a quiet understanding that your value doesn't need to be borrowed from someone else. And that alone is disorienting, compelling, and magnetic. People are addicted to control. They expect life to move in predictable ways. They assume that influence comes from shouting louder, showing more, proving constantly that you exist in their universe. But when someone moves differently, when someone carries themselves with confidence, that doesn't ask to be acknowledged. It breaks their assumptions. You didn't need permission to act. You didn't wait for their approval. You didn't rely on their gaze. And that refusal to conform to their expectations is the kind of power most people will never understand. It's invisible, yet it shifts the energy in the room. It makes the world lean toward you without anyone realizing why. Confidence that doesn't seek attention is not arrogance. It is an unshakable understanding of your own worth. It is the ability to move, speak, and decide without calculating every reaction. This morning, every small choice you made, the decision to rise, to act, to move toward what matters, was a quiet declaration. You do not depend on anyone's recognition to exist. And in that quietness lies strength. In that quietness lies the unbelievable. While others are busy performing, you've already taken control of the narrative that belongs to you. You don't announce it, you simply live it. And the more you live it, the more people can't help but notice. Think about it. The loudest people, the ones desperate for approval, are predictable. You know their next move before it happens. Their confidence is fragile, dependent on constant reinforcement. But someone who doesn't need attention, someone who doesn't chase validation, that person is unpredictable. That person carries weight in a room because their presence is not contingent on the approval of others. And that unpredictability draws eyes, curiosity, and eventually respect. People want what they can't control, and your quiet confidence is the very thing they can't manipulate. It's easy to overlook small actions, to dismiss them as inconsequential. But the truth is, confidence without attention builds quietly, invisibly, with far-reaching consequences. One act this morning, simply acting without seeking acknowledgement, sets the tone for the day. It establishes a precedent, a standard. It tells yourself and the world that your choices matter independent of external recognition, and every subsequent decision, every action you take, compounds on that foundation. You create momentum that no applause, no comment, no validation could ever give you, and it begins with a single silent act of self-assuredness. People think visibility equals influence, that being seen is the same as being powerful. They misunderstand entirely. True influence comes from substance, not spectacle. It comes from the kind of confidence that doesn't fluctuate based on external opinion. The morning you acted without attention, without needing recognition, you planted the seed of something enduring, something that grows quietly, invisibly, beyond the gaze of those addicted to applause. You didn't perform. You didn't show off. You simply acted, and in that act, you became more powerful than all the noise in the world could ever be. And the beauty of it is, this kind of confidence is self-sustaining. It doesn't demand reinforcement. It doesn't require acknowledgement. It doesn't weaken when the world ignores it. Every small, deliberate act of self-trust compounds into resilience, clarity, and gravity. You carried yourself differently this morning, moved differently this morning, decided differently this morning, and in doing so, you proved something to yourself that no one else could ever take away. Your worth, your strength, and your influence do not depend on the eyes of anyone else. People live their lives as if the rules were written in stone, as if every decision, every step, every movement had to fit neatly into a pattern crafted by someone else. They look at the world, see what is expected, what is approved, what is tolerated, and they shape themselves accordingly. They follow instructions, follow trends, follow advice without questioning whether it aligns with who they truly are. But you didn't do that this morning. You refused to follow someone else's script. You refused to bend for the comfort of others. You moved on your own terms. And that refusal, that quiet rebellion, is the beginning of something unpredictable, something powerful, something unbelievable. Unpredictability makes people uncomfortable. Humans crave order. They cling to patterns. They measure life by predictability. They want people to react the way they expect, to fit into neat little boxes, to conform to rules they barely understand themselves. But when you step outside of those boxes, when you refuse to play by their rules, when you make a choice that doesn't fit their expectations, you become an anomaly. And anomalies aren't easily ignored. Anomalies draw attention, even when they make no effort to be seen. You didn't try to impress anyone. You didn't follow the script. You simply acted differently, and that alone starts to shift everything around you. Most people mistake predictability for safety. They think that if you move as expected, if you behave as expected, if you follow the rules they understand, you will survive, you will be accepted, you will succeed. But predictability is a cage. It confines the mind, limits the possibilities, and dulls the spirit. You, this morning, refused that cage. You acted according to your own rhythm, your own rules, your own understanding of what was necessary. And that refusal to conform carries a kind of power that cannot be calculated, cannot be forced, and cannot be predicted. When you refuse to follow the rules, people start to notice. At first, maybe they don't understand why. They see your choices, your movements, your decisions, and their first reaction is confusion. They try to place you back into a box, to categorize you, to label you so that you feel more familiar, more controllable, more safe. But you resist categorization. You resist labels. You resist being tamed by expectation. And that resistance, that unpredictability, becomes magnetic. People lean in, not because they can control you, but because they can't. They are drawn to the anomaly, even as they try to rationalize it, even as they fear it. Unpredictability doesn't mean chaos. It doesn't mean reckless, wild actions. It means self-direction. It means independence. It means acting according to your own understanding, not the expectations of others. It means creating your own rhythm in a world addicted to monotony. When you refused to follow the rules this morning, you declared your autonomy. You reminded yourself that you are not a puppet, that your actions are your own, that your choices matter even if no one else understands them. And that declaration, quiet as it may be, is unbelievable. People want to control what they can see. They want to predict behavior, to anticipate outcomes, to mold others to fit their expectations. But you are not their creation. You are not their expectation. You are not a puzzle they can solve. By refusing to follow the rules, by refusing to act as they expect, you introduce chaos into their comfortable assumptions. You become the variable they can't calculate, the presence they can't ignore, the force they didn't anticipate. And that force is magnetic, compelling, and undeniably powerful. Every action you took this morning that refused the ordinary is a statement. Every small deviation, every deliberate choice outside the expected is a reminder that you are in control of your life, even in moments that seem inconsequential. The world may not see it, they may not understand it, they may not approve, but that doesn't matter. You've claimed your autonomy, you've shown that the rules are yours to interpret, to bend, or to break. And that kind of unpredictability doesn't just disrupt expectations, it creates opportunity, influence, and strength. The unbelievable is rarely loud. It rarely asks for attention. It doesn't follow the script. It doesn't wait for permission. It simply exists. And this morning, in your refusal to follow the rules, you existed in a way that disrupted the ordinary. You moved with a rhythm the world didn't expect. You acted with intention that no one anticipated. And in doing so, you became a force that is quietly, undeniably, and irresistibly magnetic. People go through their mornings thinking they are doing something ordinary. They wake up, stretch, stumble through the motions, and convince themselves that they are alive because they moved, not because they acted. But what you did this morning was far from ordinary. You acted when most people would hesitate. You made a choice when most people would wait. You did something so small, so quiet, and yet so radical that it shifts the trajectory of your day, your mindset, and perhaps even your life. It's the kind of act that seems invisible to the world, but monumental to the one who dares to do it. Maybe it was getting out of bed when every part of you wanted to sink deeper under the covers. Maybe it was choosing to face a fear that you have been avoiding, one that has been lurking quietly in the corners of your mind for weeks or months. Maybe it was simply deciding to start to move, to take that first step towards something you've been postponing. Whatever it was, it required a moment of courage, not the kind that is cheered or filmed, not the kind that earns applause or recognition, the kind that exists quietly in the space between thought and action, in the split second where hesitation meets choice. People underestimate the power of small acts. They assume that nothing significant can happen unless it is grand, visible, celebrated. But the truth is that the world's most extraordinary changes begin with a single, unseen decision. Every great transformation, every monumental success, every life-altering shift starts with a tiny defiance against comfort, against inertia, against the familiar. And this morning you defied the familiar. You stepped away from routine, from autopilot, from the invisible scripts that most people blindly follow. That step, however small, is the spark that lights the fire of the unbelievable. There's a strange magic in moments like these. The world doesn't notice them. They pass without commentary, without recognition, without applause. And that is exactly what makes them so powerful. They are unclaimed victories, personal revolutions that belong entirely to the person who dares to act. You didn't do this for anyone else. You didn't do this for validation. You didn't do this for approval. You did it because something inside of you refused to be passive, refused to be a passenger, refused to wait for life to happen to you. That refusal is the essence of the unbelievable. Most people are addicted to comfort. They stay small because it feels safe. They delay because hesitation feels easier than action. They cling to the familiar because it is predictable. But unpredictability, courage, and initiative, those are the traits that shape destiny. And this morning you acted. You chose unpredictability over routine, courage over complacency, initiative over passivity. Even if the act was invisible to everyone else, it was seismic in the context of your own life. It shifted your energy, your mindset, your momentum. It changed the way you will approach the hours that follow. The unbelievable isn't always dramatic. It doesn't need fireworks, audiences, or accolades. It often lives in the quiet, in the unseen, In the moments where no one is watching but you would exist, in the split second where you choose to act despite hesitation, to speak despite fear, to move despite comfort. Every small choice compounds, every small act builds on the last, and before long, those invisible actions create a force that is impossible to ignore. And this morning, you created that force. You began it. You planted the first seed of momentum that will grow, stretch, and expand in ways you may not yet see. Think about the people who underestimate themselves, the ones who tell themselves that mornings are boring, ordinary, inevitable. They will never understand what you did. They will never see the quiet rebellion, the small courage, the deliberate defiance of inertia. But that doesn't matter. The unbelievable is not defined by recognition. It is defined by action, by the choice to step forward when no one is watching, by the refusal to remain passive. And this morning you did exactly that. You chose action over stagnation, courage over fear, initiative over hesitation, and in doing so, you did something that cannot be unseen. Even if the world refuses to notice, every step from this morning sets the stage for what comes next. Every choice, every decision, every movement that follows will build on the foundation you laid when you acted without waiting, when you moved without permission, when you decided without hesitation. You didn't just wake up, you woke something inside yourself. Something capable, something defiant, something unstoppable. And that is the moment when the unbelievable begins. People love the idea of transformation, the thought that one day, just one day, they'll wake up and suddenly be different, stronger, smarter, more powerful. They want to believe that change is something that just happens, like magic, like fate, like a miracle waiting to be delivered straight to their front door. But that's not how the world works, is it? People don't realize how trapped they are, stuck in a loop, playing the same role over and over again. They wake up as the same person, go to sleep as the same person, and then they wonder why nothing in their life ever changes. It's almost funny watching them expect a different outcome while doing the exact same things. They don't see it. They don't see that the biggest thing holding them back, the reason they're weak, the reason they're stuck, isn't the world, isn't their circumstances, isn't some grand conspiracy keeping them down. It's them. It's their identity. The character they've been playing for so long, they don't even question if it's real anymore. The person they believe they have to be, because that's just how it's always been. The one who's always struggling, always waiting, always stuck. And the best part, they don't even realize they're wearing a mask. Not one they chose, one that was forced on them. One that was shaped by the world, by expectations, by fear. A mask built out of other people's opinions, their doubts, their limitations. They've been programmed to believe they are that person, the one who hesitates, the one who second guesses, the one who's always one step behind, always looking at others, wondering why they get to win, why they get to rise, why they seem to move through life like they own it, while they themselves are stuck, invisible, nothing more than a shadow. But here's the trick, the little secret no one tells you. There is no rule that says you have to stay the same. No law that says you have to wake up tomorrow as the same person you were today. You can destroy it all, tear it down, rip the mask off, throw it away, and become something new, something unrecognizable. But that's the part that scares people the most, isn't it? Not failure, not pain, not even hard work. What scares them is losing the comfort of who they used to be. Even if that person is weak, even if that person is broken, even if that person is miserable, because at least it's familiar. At least they know what to expect. At least they don't have to face the unknown, step into the darkness, and become someone they've never met before. But that's the price. That's the cost of power. The old you has to go. Every thought, every habit, every weakness that's been keeping you exactly where you are, it has to be destroyed, burned to the ground, not little by little, not gradually, all at once, no hesitation, no looking back, because the second you hesitate, the second you start reminiscing about who you used to be, you've already lost. People think transformation is slow, that it takes years, that it's something that happens gradually, little by little. That's because they've been lied to. They've been told change takes time, that it's a process, that they need to ease into it. But the ones who actually change, the ones who become something new, they don't waste time. They don't dip their toes in the water. They dive in head first with no way back. They make a decision and they don't break it. Because that's the only way. The only way to truly become someone else is to kill the old you completely. Not modify it, not improve it, destroy it. Erase the patterns, the routines, the old thoughts that kept you weak, because the moment you do that, really do that, you'll notice something terrifying. The way people look at you shifts. The way they talk to you, the way they react to you. It all changes. Not because they changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer playing the role they expect. You're no longer fitting into the little box they put you in. You've rewritten the script, thrown away the old version of yourself, and stepped into something entirely different. Something they can't predict. Something they don't recognize. And that's the moment you realize you were never trapped by the world. You were only ever trapped by who you thought you had to be. People say they want to change. They scream about it, cry about it, dream about it, but when it comes time to actually do something, they get distracted. Their phone buzzes, someone calls, some little inconvenience pops up, and suddenly they tell themselves, maybe I'll start tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next month. And just like that, they're back in the same place, back in the cycle, back to nothing. Distraction is the deadliest disease, but nobody treats it like one. People carry it around like a pet, like it's a part of them, like they couldn't live without it. They don't even notice how it eats away at them, how it turns hours into dust, how it whispers in their ear, telling them they have plenty of time, when in reality, they don't. Time is slipping. Every second wasted is a second they'll never get back, but they don't see it. They don't want to see it, because seeing it means admitting they're the reason nothing in their life ever changes. It's easy to blame the world, to say I would have done it but I was too busy, or I had too much going on, or I just wasn't in the right mindset. The truth, they had the time, they had the opportunity, they just didn't have the focus. They let the noise of the world control them, let every little thing pull them away from what actually matters, and then they wonder why they feel empty, why they feel weak, why they can't seem to get anywhere no matter how much they want to. Wanting something means nothing. Everybody wants something, everybody wants success, power, change, but only a few actually take it. And the difference? Focus. Not just ordinary focus, not the kind where you sit down for 5 minutes and then scroll through your phone, the kind that makes people uncomfortable, the kind that looks obsessive, the kind that makes the world feel like it's gone silent, like nothing exists except the one thing you're chasing, the kind that makes people say, "What happened to you?" The kind that makes them nervous because suddenly you're not like them anymore. Most people can't do it. They try for a little while, they sit down, they work, they push, but then their mind starts itching, looking for a way out. Maybe I should check my messages. Maybe I should take a break. Maybe I should just relax a little. And before they know it, they're gone. They don't even realize they've been hijacked, that their mind has been trained, conditioned, because distraction is easy, it's comfortable, it doesn't hurt. But you know what does hurt? Real focus. Because real focus means cutting things off. It means shutting out the noise, ignoring the messages, turning your back on the world while you build something they can't even imagine. It means saying no to people, to comfort, to anything that doesn't serve you. It means sitting in the silence and doing the work even when it's boring, even when it's exhausting, even when everything in you wants to stop. And that's why so few actually change. Because it's not just about work. It's about discipline. It's about control. It's about looking at every little thing, trying to steal your time, every message, every call, every meaningless conversation, and saying, not today. It's about deciding, I am not like the rest. I do not move like them. I do not waste time like them. I do not break focus like them. Because the moment you take control of your focus, you take control of your life. People will notice. They'll try to pull you back. They'll say you're too intense, too distant, too different. Because they want you to be distracted. They want you to be just like them, scattered, weak, unfocused. But once you break free, once you see how much time you wasted, once you realize how much you can build when you cut out everything useless, you'll never go back. People talk too much. They think that if they say the right words, if they explain themselves enough, if they get people to understand them, they'll be respected. They think words have power, but they forget words are cheap. Anyone can say anything. Promises, plans, big ideas, it's all just noise. And the more you talk, the weaker you seem. Because real power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't announce its presence. It doesn't warn people. It just moves. It acts. It does what needs to be done without asking for permission, without begging for approval. Most people don't get this. They want to be heard. They want people to notice them, so they talk. They say what they plan to do, what they want to be, how they deserve success. But they don't realize every word they say is just another chance for the world to doubt them, to laugh at them, to poke holes in their ambition. Because the moment you start explaining yourself, you've already lost. You've already given the world a reason to question you. The strong don't talk. They don't make announcements. They don't need people to believe in them. They move in silence. They build in the dark. They understand that real power isn't spoken. It's felt. It's in the way they walk into a room, the way they carry themselves, the way people sense something different about them without a single word being said. Because words can be faked, but presence can't be copied. Presence is built through action, through discipline, through becoming so undeniable that people don't need to hear you speak to know you're different. But most people don't have the patience for that. They want attention now. They want recognition now. So they open their mouths, tell the world their plans, share their thoughts, let everyone in on what they're doing, and then they wonder why things don't go their way, why their plans never work out, why they always feel like they're being held back. It's because they gave the world too much access, too much information. They let people see their next move, and the second people see your next move, they have the power to stop it. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It makes them nervous, because most people are predictable. They say exactly what they're thinking. They wear their emotions on their faces. They react. But silence makes people wonder. Silence makes them second guess. Silence controls the room. Because when you don't talk, people have to guess what's going on in your head. They don't know if you're angry, if you're planning something, if you're 10 steps ahead, or if you're not even paying attention. And that uncertainty, that mystery, that's power. The weak always reveal their hand too early. They get excited. They want to prove themselves. They tell people what they're about to do before they've even done it. And then if they fail, they look like a fool. And if they succeed, they just gave everyone the blueprint on how to stop them next time. The strong don't make that mistake. They keep quiet. They work in the shadows. They let the results do the talking. And by the time people realize what they've done, it's already too late to stop them. Silence isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about control. It's about learning to sit in a room and say nothing while people scramble to figure you out. It's about being so disciplined that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need validation. You don't need people to understand you. You just move. And when you do speak, it means something. Because when a silent man talks, people listen. When someone who never wastes words finally says something, it carries weight. Most people will never understand this. They'll keep talking, keep explaining, keep trying to impress people with words instead of actions, and they'll keep wondering why they never get anywhere. But the ones who do understand, the ones who get it, they don't need to convince anyone of anything. They don't need to prove themselves with empty promises. They don't need to be loud, because real power doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. People love comfort. They cling to it like a warm blanket, wrap themselves in it, tell themselves it's all they need. They sit in the same routines, talk to the same people, think the same thoughts, and then wonder why nothing ever changes. They say they want to be powerful, but they don't want to do what power requires. Because real power demands pain. It demands discomfort. It demands that you walk straight into the fire, knowing it's going to burn, knowing it's going to break you, knowing it's going to rip away everything soft, everything weak, everything that makes you just like everyone else. But people don't like that. They want results without the struggle. They want the reward without the price. So they stay where it's safe. They avoid the pain, the pressure, the suffering. They think they're being smart, think they're protecting themselves. But what they don't realize is that the comfort they love so much, that is the real trap. That is the thing keeping them weak. Because comfort doesn't make you stronger. Comfort doesn't sharpen your mind. Comfort doesn't turn you into something unbreakable. It just keeps you exactly where you are. Stagnant, soft, powerless. Most people don't even see it happening. They tell themselves they'll change tomorrow. They'll push themselves next week. They'll get serious when the time is right. But the time is never right. There is never a perfect moment. There is only now. And every second wasted waiting for some magical motivation is a second spent getting weaker. Because while they're waiting, someone else is working. While they're avoiding pain, someone else is embracing it. While they're getting softer, someone else is getting strong. And one day they'll look around and realize they're at the bottom, that all the people they used to think were just like them aren't anymore, that the ones who were willing to suffer, the ones who were willing to go through hell, the ones who understood that pain is the cost of power, those people pass them by, and there's no catching up. Because strength isn't built overnight. It's built in the trenches, in the days when you don't feel like it, in the moments when your body is screaming at you to stop, when your mind is begging for a break, when everything in you wants to go back to comfort, and you say, that's where real power is born. Not in talent, not in luck, not in natural ability, but in the moments when you suffer and keep going anyway. The people at the top, they weren't born different. They weren't handed something special. They just understood what others refused to accept. That pain is the entry fee to anything great. That suffering isn't a punishment. It's a tool, a weapon, a way to carve yourself into something the world can't ignore. But most people, they run from it. The second things get hard, they fold. The second they feel discomfort, they look for a way out. They tell themselves they're not ready, that it's too much, that they'll try again later. But later never comes. Because the truth is, they don't want to change. They just like the idea of change. They like thinking about being powerful. But actually becoming powerful, that's different. That's painful. That's ugly. That's something most people aren't built for. But the few who are, they don't complain. They don't make excuses. They don't wait for the right moment. They take every bit of pain, every moment of struggle, every ounce of suffering, and they use it. They don't run from it. They seek it, because they know that every scar, every wound, every second spent in discomfort is turning them into something unstoppable, something the world can't break, something that doesn't just survive, but dominates. People are obsessed with what others think of them. They walk around like puppets, pulling their own strings, making sure every move is just right, just safe enough, just acceptable enough, just normal enough. They smile when they don't want to, laugh when they don't feel like it, nod along to things they don't believe in. And for what? So people will like them, so they won't be judged, so they can fit neatly into a world that doesn't care about them in the first place. It's funny, isn't it? The way people trade their own power for approval, the way they silence themselves just to blend in, the way they build cages around their own minds just so no one can call them different. They do everything they can to be accepted, to be understood, to be liked. And then they wonder why they feel empty, why they feel trapped, why they wake up every day and see a stranger in the mirror. It's because they gave up who they are just to make everyone else comfortable. The truth is, people are going to judge you no matter what you do. You could be the strongest, the smartest, the most disciplined person in the world, and they'll still find something to pick apart. You could follow every rule, play every part perfectly, and they'll still say, you're too much or not enough. That's the game. And the only way to win is to stop playing, to stop caring, to stop living your life like a trained animal waiting for a pat on the head from people who don't matter. Most people will never do this. They can't. They've spent too long craving acceptance, too long shaping themselves into something digestible. They don't know how to exist outside of other people's opinions. They don't know how to be hated. And that's what really scares them, the idea that someone, somewhere, might not approve, that someone might not like them, that someone might talk behind their back, whisper their name in the wrong tone, roll their eyes when they walk into a room, the horror. But here's the thing. Being liked is overrated. Being accepted is a trap. The most powerful people in the world, they don't need approval. They don't need permission. They don't need applause. They say what they want to say, do what they want to do, become what they want to become, and they let people choke on their opinions. They don't explain themselves. They don't shrink themselves. They don't ask to be accepted. They take up space, whether people like it or not. And yes, people will talk, they'll judge, they'll hate. But hate is just proof that you're real, that you're doing something, that you're making people uncomfortable. And that's good, that's necessary, because comfort never changed anything. Comfort never made anyone powerful. Comfort never built empires. The people who change the world, who break the cycle, who rewrite the rules, they are never the ones who play it safe. They are never the ones who bow down. They are the ones who let the world talk, let the world judge, let the world throw stones, and they keep walking. Most people don't have the stomach for that. They need validation. They need to be liked. They need to know they're on the right path, doing what everyone else approves of. They'll spend their whole lives chasing that feeling, chasing acceptance, chasing approval, chasing the illusion of being enough. But the ones who make it, the ones who matter, they don't chase anything. They don't ask for permission. They don't live for applause. They do what they want, and they let the weak drown in their opinions. People talk about control like it's something they have, like they can shape the world, bend it to their will, make things happen just because they want them to. It's cute, really, the way they tell themselves they're in charge. The way they think their plans mean something, the way they believe deep down that if they just try hard enough, just work long enough, just push hard enough, everything will go exactly how they But life doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care about your timeline. It doesn't care how bad you want something or how much effort you put in. You can be the smartest, the strongest, the most prepared person in the world, and life will still throw a punch you never saw coming. And when it does, it won't care if you're ready. It won't care if you deserve better. It won't stop and say, "Oh, you weren't expecting that? Here, let's make it easier for you." No, no. No, life will knock you flat, step over you, and keep moving like you were never even there. And that's the part people don't like, the part that scares them, the part that keeps them up at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why nothing ever goes the way they expect. Because deep down, they know the truth. They are not in control. And that terrifies them, so they fight it. They cling to their little schedules, their little routines, their little blueprints for how things should go. And every time something falls apart, every time life doesn't cooperate, every time they realize, again, that they are not the ones calling the shots, they panic. They fall apart, they break down, because in their minds, losing control means losing everything. But here's the trick. There was never any control to lose in the first place. It was an illusion. a lie they told themselves to feel safe, a comforting little bedtime story to make the chaos seem manageable. But the truth is, control was never real. The only thing you ever had was choice. The choice to keep going or to quit. The choice to adapt or to crumble. The choice to let the chaos consume you or to use, because that's the secret. The powerful ones, the ones who rise when everyone else falls, they don't fight the chaos, they embrace it. They don't waste time crying over what should have happened, what was supposed to happen. They adjust, they adapt. They take whatever life throws at them, whatever mess, whatever storm, whatever disaster, and they work with it. They don't break down because the plan changed. They become the kind of person who doesn't need a plan. And that makes them unstoppable. Because when you stop trying to control everything, you become immune to the fear of losing control. When you stop needing things to go a certain way, you become untouchable. When you learn to move with the chaos instead of against it, nothing can break you. Because you aren't relying on a perfect outcome, on a perfect path, on everything going just right. You aren't fragile. You aren't desperate for things to be easy. You expect the chaos. You welcome it. And that makes you stronger than anyone who still thinks they can outplan the storm.